right, we are back here wrapping up the podcast this week, talking pop culture. We're going to talk about a Netflix basketball movie today. It's actually not really about basketball. Talking High Flying Bird with the great Alan Austin. Alan, welcome back. How are you?
Thanks, Mike. Always good to be here. I appreciate you having me.
No problem. As you know, I've been sort of theming these pop culture segments towards the sport we're doing of late. We did Space Jam recently, done hockey movies. Last time you were on here, we did some golf. Today, we're going to talk about High Flying Bird, which I think you would agree, very interesting movie.
Yes, it was very interesting, and it's such a nice think piece. You know what I mean? From an acclaimed director like Steven Soderbergh, who's made some big time movies. I would consider this one of his experimental movies, and I think it really is just a nice job.
Yeah, it is. Before we dive deeper into the movie, can you give everybody the elevator pitch of what High Flying Bird's about?
Kind of timely with the baseball situation the way it is. Not exactly the same thing, but it centers around an NBA lockout where it seems as though there is no end in sight at the beginning of the movie, and an agent uh, comes into play with his star client, who is, he's a typical player. I don't want to say they don't paint him as dumb, but he's definitely not going to solve the crisis, so to speak. He's just waiting and waiting and waiting. And the agent takes it upon himself to kind of concoct a plan to get the league and the owners to agree on something. I guess that's very much a basic, bare bones plot outline.
Yeah, I think that's a fair description. Basically, the agent Ray Burke at the end of the movie gets called into his office, which, by the way, if people are not aware, like I used to intern at SNY. That was at the office of the agency at the SNY production studios. It's actually pretty cool, like behind the scenes tidbit there. He basically gets told in the movie, like, look, this lockout's going on for a while. Like, we don't know how much longer we're able to keep you on. So Ray takes on himself, like, in order to save my job and save other people's jobs, I'm going to get the NBA to play again.
Yes. And the way he does it is very Soderbergh like, which I thought was very cool. You always like I feel like Steven Soderbergh's known for having characters who are witty, they always feel like they know something others don't, at least the main characters who need to hatch schemes or plots, for better or worse. So, Ray Burke takes on that persona, and this is a very low key movie. I wouldn't really call it a basketball movie as much as I'd call it a social kind of commentary kind of film. And I loved it. I thought it was really cool. I thought the acting across the board was very stellar. No one was over the top. Everyone, just lived their roles. And I just want to go back when I said that they don't paint the basketball player as dumb. I think what they are trying to say is that the players are just a cog in this system, and the commentary is how to take that system down, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does, because throughout the movie, Ray's basically telling his client, he's basically saying, like, hey, like, the league is going to use you. They're going to let you go. You should take more authority of your brand and make more about you and take control of your destiny. I think that's sort of the message he's trying to convince his client to take.
Yes, especially young black athletes, and they reference the game over the game often, which I think is a commentary on the white owners, taking control over the black players. And yeah, they're giving them money and salaries, but still they're controlling their destiny within the sport. And I do think having Dr. Harry Edwards come in at the end, there's definitely a point that is proven, and I commend Soderbergh for taking the subject matter and giving it light, because it's a very interesting thing to think about. And I think it dates back to there was an old book I read in my in one of my history of sports classes way back in college, where it's like modern day gladiators, just people out there, for the entertainment of others who sit around watching. Now, the difference is obviously the gladiators were slaves and people who had no other choice. Meanwhile, athletes are getting paid millions and millions of dollars. But it is the same idea, where there are those controlling the game around. And I think it's a very interesting and deep dive on such a low key movie. I think it's very well done.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I like the concept itself is very interesting because it's sort of like a sports movie without any sports in it. Like, aside from like one, two, like 30-second like sequences basically on a social media video, you don't see any actual basketball played in the movie. It's just about the people working around the sport and talking about like, the relationships between owners and players, the cultural dynamics of the black athlete. Like, this is, I also think, like, the idea of sports without sports is very interesting considering we're in this quarantine state where we haven't had a team sporting event since the middle of March, and they're about to come back now. So that was an interesting time to be looking at this.
I think it's so. If the movie came out today, it would be 10 times bigger than it wound up being. Because right now, with the racial injustice in the country and the sports lockout, it's two birds, one stone in terms of coverage of stuff that needs to be talked about.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And I do think the piece is interesting. I know Soderbergh has hinted that now they're thinking about doing a movie like going forward, sort of like a spiritual sequel to this, where they basically talk about how like basketball players are adapting to life without basketball, sort of like a basketball quarantine movie. I do think that would be an interesting follow up.
Honestly, I think anything Soderbergh touches would be interesting in the least to at least check out. But if he's basing it around the world he kind of created in High Flying Bird, I think it's definitely must see.
Yeah, I would like to see that as well. And one thing that's another interesting note about this is that the entire movie was actually shot on iPhone 8s. So there were no fancy film cameras. This is all done with a camera on an iPhone. And I think I like the way they were able to use the position of the camera because they had the phone. You could put it at angles you can't normally get a camera into. It created some interesting perspectives.
For sure. And I think the fact that it is a low key movie, like the script doesn't call for anything crazy. There's no digital effects necessary. There's no, big scene like, let's say, another Soderbergh, an Ocean's 11, where you need a casino and you need all the. There's nothing. It's a dialogue heavy movie, and you get the fact that he can shoot it on the iPhone. I think helps not make the audience experience feel underwhelming. So if he were to make, like, let's say this was a theatrical release, I don't think it would land. You know what I mean? It's not a big enough film. It's not a big enough script for people to feel they need to pay $15 to go see in theaters. But because of Netflix and its capabilities, Soderbergh is able to experiment. So he takes this script that may not have gotten greenlit because it's not flashy enough. He puts in, he lowers the budget incredibly and he gets it made. And a lot of that has to do with being able to shoot it on the iPhone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This script, as you look at it, it kind of feels like this is something you could do as a stage play if you wanted. Like, it doesn't feel like it needs to be a movie, but I think the way that this was handled on Netflix with the iPhone 8, I think added to the experience.
Yeah, I had one friend who said that he thought it would be good as a 10-part miniseries, but I actually think it's good as is. I think if you expand it too much, you might lose the main focus of the story, which is, the athlete rising up to take control of his own life and the people around him who are there to support him. I think that would get lost over 10 episodes where you would have to explore many other things and maybe go down rabbit holes that don't need to be, explored. I think this worked. It was an hour and a half, easy in, easy out. Point got across, a powerful point, and the acting's superb. I think it hit every beat it needed to. And honestly, I think if you were to expand the story, you'd need to show more basketball. And I think that basketball would act like showing actual basketball would lose the luster of what we're going for. I know that sounds crazy in a basketball themed movie, but basketball is not the point of the movie.
Yeah, I would sort of agree. It's sort of like how some of the more Marvel movies sort of like take like themes and drop the superhero thing into the theme, like Captain America, Civil, like Winter Soldier, or political thriller in aspects. But if you took the superhero stuff out, it enhances the political thriller aspect. Like if you took the basketball in here and put more of it in, you would detract from the main point they're trying to get across.
Yeah, yeah, and they threw in the talking heads, which I know you wanted to discuss from, I believe, who are the three players? Reggie
Jackson, Donovan Mitchell,
Mm-hmm.
Karl Anthony Towns, the three guys.
Right. Now, my take on those is a little bit probably unpopular. I thought they were nice fan service. Like, I think, I hope that they weren't added just to, like, add something to the audience experience because Netflix or somebody wasn't confident in necessarily the film on its own. Because I don't think they necessarily add anything to the story other than here are three players like Eric Scott who had to come into the league. So I think they're nice. They're a nice touch, but I do think if it were a bigger movie, they would be nice for like DVD extras or something like that, as opposed to being part of the film. Because where I would argue myself is that there's a touch of these players are more than just players. They're in the public spotlight, and all the things that rookies and young players have to deal with are very real. But I do think the movie itself showcases and spotlights everything we need to know as audience members and as a society in general. That to have them there is nice. It's nice, but I don't know if it's necessarily needed. How do you feel?
I liked having them there, and I do think they sort of added a bit of like gravitas to the movie because it sort of like gives you a little pause where they give you little nuggets of wisdom about their experiences in the league, sort of adding a little bit of like I want to say context to what Eric Scott's going through throughout the movie as he tries to get ready to really start his career, and he's trying to think of things, and they're talking about experiences they had. I think they do add to that. They're all talking about their rookie years basically.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. I just don't think if they were gone from the movie, I don't think the movie's any worse for the wear.
That's a fair point. I think it's like nice supplementary material, but like if you remove the three of them and just ran the movie as is and say it's like 5 minutes less, I don't think you're gonna miss much.
Yeah, and and maybe it's a personal thing, but I kind of tend to get taken out of the moment from stuff like that. So like I'm sitting there watching what is fiction, and all of a sudden you're throwing in a talking head documentary style, and I want to go back to the people and the characters. It kind of makes me like almost like if it was established that Donovan Mitchell, Reggie Jackson, Karl Anthony Towns existed in the world of High Flying Bird, I think it would be a little bit more serviceable. But here I don't know. It was hard for me to latch on to them, and that just may be something I'm missing, something I'm not seeing. But I get why they're there. It adds a certain, like you said, gravitas. It adds a certain expert level opinion on the matter. I would have also liked to see an agent maybe get a talking head, a popular agent chime in as well, if we're going to go down that route, because I feel like Eric Scott's important, but the agent character is the one. He's the glue that ties us together. So if we're going to get a player's point of view, I'd like to see an agent's view on how a young player coming into the league, how they handle that, how they work with the player, what they look for, etc.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Go back to the agent. Let's go back to Ray Burke. Let's talk about the execution of the plan. Did you like how they played it out? They do throw you a bit of a curveball at the end when you don't know where he's going, then you see where it leads to. And you're like, oh, this is actually pretty genius.
Yeah, it was great. And like I said before, it's the Soderbergh main character, needs to get a problem solved, is very smart about it. Every domino needs to fall into place perfectly, and it does. What I liked is that maybe you can answer. One question I have is, so in the real life NBA, LeBron and Steph wouldn't be able to have a one-on-one matchup, so to speak, because it has nothing to do with the NBA per their contract. So how would it be different for Umber and Eric Scott to be able to do such a thing and not just be like sued right away?
Well, I think because technically they're both rookies, they had not signed their contracts yet, so technically they're not employed by the NBA.
Oh, they were just like draft rights.
Yeah, they were draft rights because throughout the movie, Ray Burke's like, hey, you're going to get your contract, you're going to sign once the lockout's over, then you're going to start your career.
Okay, so these guys were drafted first and second round, hypothetically, by the Knicks or the New York team. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. So you've got his plan is that, well, if the league's not going to restart, my bank account's hurting, my lifestyle's hurting, I've got to fix this, and I've got to show the world, why I'm the best at what I do. I don't know if there's as much of personal chip on his shoulder as I'm making it seem, but there definitely is one that comes to play. He knows it's like a game of chess. He knows all the players, he knows all their moves, and he works around it. And so the execution of the plan is that he's going to create buzz around something that is not an NBA game to be able to get his players paid and to be able to get the owners to see that there will be an alternative if they don't wise up and it works out. Now, I can't articulate it so well, how, all the ins and outs of what he does, but essentially he creates he gets this player, he gets the other New York, I guess, draftee Jamero Umber, and he gets them to kind of get into like a street hoop battle at a local charity event, thus creating the image, creating the spotlight for them for the public eye. It's on Skip and Shannon, like everyone's paying attention, and he stops the game. It's not shown, but he stops the game before there could be a winner with the idea that, like a boxing prize fight, we can market this, sell tickets, and get people to come out and see the one-on-one matchup of these two great athletes. And that lights a fire under the NBA owners to get a deal done, because they would lose their power if there's an alternative to the NBA that makes money.
Yeah, and this is something that Eric Scott does not see, because at the end of the movie he fires Ray because he thinks that Ray conned him out of money, and then Ray basically points out and says, "Hey, this is not about, this is bigger than just you making money. This is a whole bigger problem that you have to consider." And he leaves him the book on the plight of the black athlete. I think it was a very interesting way to end the movie.
Absolutely, and that's why I think socially this movie is so important and hits the nail on the head. The point of the movie isn't will Eric Scott be able to be in the NBA and get money. It's will Eric Scott be able to take control of his life from the white owners that own, essentially not own, but own the rights to their careers. These young black athletes, and it's just like Ray Burke is like, open your eyes, and the coach Spence, who's a great character, and I love Bill Duke as an actor. Their whole dynamic of the game over the game and the exploration of that concept and how it's solved in this movie, I think is just brilliant.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's grade this movie. What would you grade High Flying Bird?
I would grade it. I would give it an A, because I think with what it's working with, it executes it flawlessly. The low key status, the low, not necessarily low budget, but it's not a grand movie. It's a very it's
Grounded.
a very, yeah, it's grounded. It's very real. All the performances feel authentic. I never feel like I'm watching a movie. I feel like I'm watching something play out in front of me in real life. And I just adored it. I thought it was a very quick hour and a half, and I think it didn't outstay its welcome. It got its point across. You know what I mean? I thought it was very efficient in its time, and I just thought it was wonderfully, wonderfully constructed, and I think it worked great as a Netflix movie. I think if it were in theaters, it may be seen as underwhelming if it was given a big budget, a big production, but I think with the iPhone, the low-key aspect, everything was executed perfectly. I give it an A.
I am right there with you. I give it an A. I think people just set your expectations. This is not a pure basketball movie. This is sort of about the reality of the basketball world and like the world that some of these athletes are living in. I think that's an interesting case study. I thought the style of the movie, as you said, I think grounding it in reality here, not using all the fancy cameras and spending like 20 minutes on epic basketball scenes, I thought really enhanced the message of the movie. I would give it an A. I'd give it a must recommend. Actually, I think you should go get around to watching this before the NBA comes back in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting. Like, I wonder how many players are just afraid to upset the system in any sport. I know right now baseball's dealing with it, and you have every sport has dealt with at least some kind of lockout since I've been following sports in my 30 plus years. Every sport has dealt with a lockout, and it's just interesting to me how players really do. All players fully understand what is going on when their sport is locked out. And the vibe I got from the movie is that Eric Scott did not, and he was just kind of hoping and waiting and wishing. And then you have Ray Burke, who's like, we got to fix this thing, and I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a good message it's getting out here. Let's hang out a little more hardware here. Who is the MVP of the movie?
Ray Burke, without a shadow of a doubt. He, in 72 hours, and we have spoiled the movie at this point.
Yeah, if you weren't getting in this without watching High Flying Bird, like, I'm sorry, it's still a good experience to go through this. I mean, we didn't give you everything, but like the basic gist is there. It's still worth a watch.
Yeah, and at no point when watching the movie, did I not think everything would work out the way Ray had
Yeah.
anticipated. But Ray is the MVP. He's the mastermind. Everything works out, and he plays people like chess pieces the way he needs to. He never insults anybody's intelligence. He never does anything, under the table or dirty. It's all pretty clean, and obviously he does things without people realizing it, but nobody's life is going to be ultimately ruined by anything he does, and he still achieves his mission, and everyone benefits because the owners get their game back, even though they're being stubborn. The players get their league back. The fans get the league back. Ray gets his job promoted, essentially, and in a couple days' time, he solves a lockout problem and gets a promotion himself. So I would say he is the MVP, hands down.
Yeah, I think he's the clear-cut winner. Just for the sake of variety, I will also throw in Coach Spence, who I think plays a very good supporting role in the movie, and his some of his bits are just hysterical throughout the movie.
Yeah, he's definitely a nice touch to the movie. And Bill Duke's been around for a long time. I first fell in love with Bill Duke from the original Predator. He's in the original Predator. So since then, I've always kind of had an eye on him. So it was really nice to see him here, getting the job done and having those nice moments.
Yeah, let's go the other way. Who is the least valuable player in this movie?
Well, it depends how you look at it, right? If you're one of those people who's going to side with owners, you're going to think that there kind of is no least valuable player, I guess. You're going to say everyone's doing what they feel is right. But as me, as an audience member, I've got to look at the script. I've got to look at the story. And to me, the least valuable player, it's tough, man. I guess the agency who Ray works for, so the Zachary Quinto character, would be the least valuable player, because here he is just kind of saying, well, the basketball department's going to shut down. It is what it is until further notice, and never takes a step forward to help solve anything. And then Ray has to go and do it on his own with the back against the wall. So I know it's probably kind of an off-the-wall pick, but I'm going to go with the Zachary Quinto character.
Yeah, he doesn't add much. Kyle MacLachlan's character, the owner's rep, I do think very slimy character also. I would give him LVP points.
That's fine, but I do think he fought for what he was believing in, and I think probably if you're going to make him the LVP, you've got to make all the owners the LVP because he represents the group.
Yeah, well, I'm in a very giving owners LVP points mood after what we just witnessed in the baseball negotiations.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And they are the LVPs in the baseball current real day lockout. I just think in this movie, we don't get all the facts of what they're fighting for. We just kind of get to feel that they want a bigger piece of the pie for themselves. Like is that the general gist you got in terms of the lockout itself in this movie?
Yeah, that's the sense I got. Sort of like they wanted to redistribute the revenue share. That's basically the sense I got, what the owners wanted.
Yeah. Yep. So that's my LVP, but I certainly agree with you that the owners in every major sport are just horribly, horribly selfish.
Indeed. I think that's a good take on High Flying Bird. Definitely give it the recommendation. Go check it out. Before we go, like we do every time when you've been on here the last couple of times, give me a couple of streaming picks that you're into right now.
All right. Being that quarantine, I've kind of shifted away from drama lately, and that's only because the world is in such disarray that watching more serious stuff just doesn't pull me out of the moment. So I'm going to keep it light for this week. I'm going to give you a comedy and then 2 reality shows. My first is my favorite competition game show on TV. I've been binging old seasons, CBS All Access Big Brother. I'm a huge Big Brother fan. I think it's a great competitive show. Without going into too much detail for the sake of time, it's a bunch of people locked inside a house. Every week there's a head of household who gets to essentially call the shots, and gameplay ensues from there, both socially and through gameplay competitively. It's my favorite reality competition show.
Yeah, I think also I will point out I've seen this show a lot, and the actual game itself does not jive what CBS wants to market you. They like to market it as more like, oh, look at these wacky people living in the house wearing costumes and basically getting slimed and doing all this stuff. But there is a bit of a mental game to the whole show. It's actually very interesting.
the mental game is more important. Like for true fans of the show, the social game, the mental side of it, is what like separates the good players from the bad players. And you could be really good at competitions physically, but if you don't have that mental game behind you, you're going to falter. And I do think if you're going to stream Big Brother, it might service you better to watch some of the older seasons, which feel like ages ago, but we're only on season. If it happens this summer, it'll be 22. So the last 20 years, they have a tendency in the last couple of years to try and recruit model types or people who have never seen the show to be contestants. When I think back in the day, you had more fans of the show and people who were there, who were in it to win it, not just gain notoriety from the appearance and Instagram followers afterwards.
Yeah, I think
So
it's definitely
yeah,
it's definitely tough because like some of the more recent seasons, I mean, like it's hard to find a good one from start to finish. I think I came on at like 15. I'd say like
okay.
the closest I think of being exciting all the way through was 20, but then 20 kind of fizzled at the end when the other alliance really had no idea how to actually do anything.
The Faute Alliance in 20 was so endearing and lovable, but could not get out of their own way. I would say 20 was a fantastic season. And if there are people out there looking for seasons to watch, I personally recommend 10, 14, 20. And then if you want to see a season that just had a bunch of likable people, it's not necessarily the best season of Big Brother, but I thoroughly enjoyed 60.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. So where I would say those are interesting, especially if there are rumors are true that there might be All Stars coming back this summer. That would be interesting to watch.
100%. And the All Stars names that they're throwing out there are solid.
Yes.
So I am very much looking forward to it, and I do believe it'll happen.
All right. What are your other two picks that you're going with?
Other two picks, and the other reality one is a show that is so hard for me to watch, but it's kind of like I can't look away from the horror, and it's called Dating Around on Netflix. So the premise is one character gets 5 blind dates, and they have to pick one of the dates to go on a second date with at the end. But the fun thing is that it's not just hot 20-something-year-olds looking for other hot 20-something-year-olds. You get real, genuine people, and it makes for some of the most awkward yet thrilling television I've ever seen. Like, I was watching last night with my fiance, and I had a blanket over my head for 90% of it because I could not watch what was happening. But it was highly entertaining, and it's definitely a very real, authentic show. And the showrunners and the producers just let the cameras roll, and whatever happens, happens. And the dates are sometimes awkward, they're sometimes great, but it's just fun. It's a mindless, easy watch, and that's why I'm recommending it right now.
That sounds like a fun one to check out if you're into that kind of stuff. I might tell that to John Stanko, who is a big Bachelor guy, so maybe that would be up his alley. But what's your last pick?
Okay. My last pick is one that is a comedy, but it is super timely right now, and that's Parks and Rec. It's not on anymore. It's over with, but I feel like its relevancy is very high right now. We have political stuff going on that was kind of referenced in the show far back as 2012 in terms of the types of people who are at play, and just the idea of townspeople getting their showcase in real life now, and how they're used in Parks and Rec, and how people have to navigate around the society they live in. It's just so relevant to today. And I love the show. A lot of great characters. Parks and Rec is my final recommendation, and it's on Netflix.
Yeah, Parks and Rec I've seen a lot of love for of late. Does seem like that's a good one to go to. I'm gonna throw one pick out this week. It's one I've been going to because I've been watching it the last couple of years. I've been catching up on the most recent season right now. Have you ever heard of the Amazon Prime show All or Nothing?
No, I haven't.
It's basically, if you follow the Hard Knocks style, it's basically like Hard Knocks over the course of a regular season for an NFL team, where they basically follow the team throughout the year, give you behind the scenes, the players' lives, all that good stuff. I'm watching season 5 right now, which is the Eagles last year, which I think was definitely a fun year to check out. They've had the Cowboys on in the past. They have the Cardinals, the Panthers. It's a lot of good seasons in there. I would recommend going and check it out if you're getting ready for football and hoping you're going to see football in the fall.
I actually have heard of it. I just didn't know the name of it. I heard of the show itself, and I knew the Eagles were the last team on it. I just forgot the name of the show, being All or Nothing.
Yeah, they've had some good stuff on the show. I remember the Rams were on, I think, the second year. They actually led the year off. That was the year Jeff Fisher got fired in season. They sort of had the fall of that on the show, which is actually pretty interesting.
Oh, interesting. Very cool.
Yeah, so that's my pick for this week, all or nothing, because I'm still working through some of the stuff we mentioned last time. Like I'm watching Homecoming still. I'm getting through that. I'm getting through a couple other things. I'm catching up on
I
what
got to
some
be
of the.
honest with you. I tried to start Homecoming season 2, but I just can't get into it right now. I'm going to have to revisit it in a little bit. It's just so heavy, so deep that I just could not focus on it right now.
Yeah, like I'm trying to like keep. I'm 2 episodes in. I'm trying to keep track of it, and like it's a little harder because like you get a brand new character at the start, and like you're trying to figure out how they fit in. We've only seen one character we saw in season 1 so far, so you're like trying to place it in this story. It's not making a ton of sense yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right, there you have it, Alan Austin. Thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, how can people find you on social media? Keep up with some of the stuff you're up to.
Twitter at Allen, ALLEN _ Austin, AUSTIN _. And then on Instagram, it's Allen Austin Sports.
All right, my friend. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Always a pleasure.